Welcome back. I'm talking leadership with John Cardella. So John, just before the break, we were talking a little bit about, getting people involved in the decision-making process and engaging people within the entire organization as opposed to just the leadership team. One of the exercises that I've always liked doing with client organizations is I call it the two things exercise, and it's like, what are the two things the organization needs to do in order to make this vision a reality, or whatever the case may be, and what are the two things that I need to do? And what I use that as is a tool to start to get people to take ownership of, I need to make some changes, and also it opens up a real genuine dialogue with the leadership of like, hey, here's the things that we think you need to do. You did that kind of a process, maybe different than that, but you certainly stepped out and asked for input from the entire organization. Tell me a little bit about how you did that.
Well, the way we would do that, as an example, on engagement, we do surveys every year. One example would be our employee engagement survey. So our employee engagement survey is quite extensive, but we essentially, we share with our people that it's very, very important to get their input. And every year, I'll tell you that we typically get over 85 to 90% response rate.
Great.
And that is just entirely voluntary. Nobody's pushing anybody to do anything, and everything is anonymous. But what's interesting is we do get the results on that survey, and typically, we are historically we're a very high engagement oriented company, so our engagement will be quite high. But again, what we strive to do is we strive to become the best, if not the best in the market, certainly the best in the eyes of our people, right? And so because of that, it's just not good enough for us that we just take, the output and we just decide to go from there. What we then do is we basically take that information, we put it in a way that makes it easy to communicate back, and we set up focus groups with everyone in our organization. Now, within Canada, we have around 1,300 employees. So we set up this last time, and we do it year after year, over 100 focus groups. So we ask our people, tell us what you think about these results. What is it that really is important to you? And what are the key drivers that you want us to focus on, so that we can make some active change towards it? And so we get feedback. It could be pay, or it could be performance management, or it could be career progression. And we get that feedback, and we change our strategies to basically either fix or improve an area that we believe needs to be improved for us to continue to strive to be that best oriented company. So we leverage our entire people, our entire kind of like workforce. When we say 100 focus groups, we touch probably about 75% of everybody, and they're all randomly selected. So to me, that's the way that I like to kind of like to get to what really resonates with our people by getting them involved again in terms of what's going on.
Well, and when you're doing that number of focus groups, I mean, I have a marketing background, and I remember sitting in traditional focus groups, and we would do 8 or 10 across the country, and then we would extrapolate from that.
Right.
I mean, really, the term focus group may be appropriate, but it sounds more like they're ongoing conversations. I mean, you must be constantly getting input from people and then feeding them back in those situations.
Correct, and it's time consuming, and it takes a lot of energy to get through them all. But you sort of like, you hit the nail on the head earlier, Bill, when you mentioned the fact that by doing so, you're creating ownership. You're making the people in your organization a vested owner of the outcome on engagement, because they too want to work for a great employer, and they want to help, and they want to help you to accomplish that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the other thing is that, when people talk about, we communicate to our employees, they tend to say, well, we do a newsletter, we send out an email, maybe the corporate, some of the from head office does a video, and they're going, done, finished, tick mark.
Yeah.
When you've done what you've just described, that's an incredibly powerful communication tool as well, because I mean, if you do 100 focus groups, that's 100 times 8 to 10 people, which is, you know, a huge number of people that walk out of that discussion, having had the discussion with their colleagues and peers about what's working, what's not, et cetera, and then I mean, it sends a very strong signal that we're listening.
We're listening, and we know what we need to do at that point, and we're good to go. But that's just one example of what we do. Every month, we have locations in virtually every province in Canada. And so every month, as an exec team, we get up, and the entire exec team will go to a location, and we'll meet with town halls in front of our people in that location. And it starts again with our president just giving a sense of where we stand. And if you were to be there, I mean, this is not what you would consider a terribly formal presentation. It's very informal. We use PowerPoints to a minimal degree, but it's essentially having a conversation much like we're doing today in terms of how our company is performing and what's going on in our company. And the execs around the table also share what's going on in their world. And then we do a good Q&A to basically wrap things up. And it makes those people feel like they're really, truly connected, again, with what's happening in the company. We do videotape those discussions, those town halls, and then we put them on our web for the rest of our workforce to see. So our people can have a month-to-month window in terms of what's going on in our company.
What are the key topics?
What is our president thinking, and what's going on, and what are the questions that our people are concerned about? And it keeps people terribly connected into what's going on.
Well, and I find if, you know, and those kind of conversations I would would definitely fall into the category of real honesty and transparency, because you know, there's all too often you have the executive tour, and it's like the royal tour, and they kind of go by and little hand wave, but there's no real legitimate conversation here. But if you're doing it monthly, and I mean, that tells me that, you know, people are going to ask you the tough questions, and some of those questions you're probably going, oh my gosh, how am I going to answer that question, because it's a tough question.
Correct. Oh, it happens.
Are you telling them the truth?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Again, it comes back to our first value is integrity.
Right.
Our first value is integrity, and you know, we've all been in the hot seat, and we've all sometimes we do things to make things better. Yeah. But you know, and I know that sometimes things don't always go as you expect. And I can give you one example. You know, we did a major change in benefit provisioning, and we changed benefits, and it's important. You know, the communication process is very, very important. And so sometimes when you basically you don't focus on certain areas that people want you to focus on, you hear about it.
Oh, you sure do.
But the important of that is that you adjust course very, very quickly.
If you're lucky enough to have a culture where you do hear about it, because there's too many cultures where everybody zips it, says nothing, and you never know.
No, we are fortunate. Again, it's having this open channel that allows us to do it. I'll give you another example. Back in 2008, where, you know, as you know, the recession hit, and many companies started, their first course of action was layoff. And what we chose to do during that period of time was to in fact utilize one of our channels, which is a listening channel that we call Speak Up. So we went to our employees and we asked them, what is it that we could do to reduce cost? Help us to identify where we can reduce costs so that we can stay the course. And what was amazing was that we created a little program called Cost Busters as a result of that. But it was all employee-driven suggestions in terms of cost reductions. And you know what? We were able to avoid having to do a layoff that year. We saved, I think, close to about $2 to $3 million. And it was just amazing. All great suggestions that in many forms are still in place right now.
Well, and the folks in the front line, they know what's going on. I mean, as good as any kind of communication is, I would rarely at the senior executive level know what's really happening at the front line with the same degree of sensitivity and awareness that folks in the front line are.
I would agree with you with the caveat, as long as they're connected to the business.
Yes.
So the key is, keeping them connected to the business. And to do that, of course, you've got to share the goals of the organization with them. Got to kind of like set goals for them to accomplish what needs to be done, and also put development goals in place for them as well so that they can grow and learn within the organization.
So after the next break, I'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about how you do set goals and objectives and communicate them to the organization and make sure they're well aligned with the goals of the overall organization.
Great. Okay, sounds good.